First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashim Yahushua, Ba'ashim Rakakwadash. Yahweh is to this world ignorantly calls God. Yahushua is to this world ignorantly calls Jesus. Ba'ashim means in the name, Rakah means spirit, and Quadash means holy. That's on the Paleo Hebrew. I also want to give double honors to the outer bishops and apostles of Great Millstone that taught me this truth. In today's video, I just wanted to go into the importance of, taking care of your body, right? Because, this thing of ours, this is life that we're living, trying to walk that righteous path, you gotta also feed into the flesh. And I'm not talking about feeding into the flesh, the lust, just the out here doing some wickedness. No, I'm talking about, taking care of your body, right? And the way I see it is that, if you eat shitty foods, an easy example is, if you eat shitty foods, you're going to be tired all the time. You're going to feel lethargic. And having that feeling is ultimately going to lead you to not want to do those spiritual things, right? So if you eat a whole tub of ice cream, you're going to be sitting there, with that food coma. And the last thing that's going to be on your head is, damn, let me do some reading. Let me make a video. Because you're just going to be physically, lethargic. And everything at the end of the day, goes for full circle. So, all the brothers out there, all the believers, you have to have a real conscious, you got to put a real conscious effort into, taking care of your body. And, everything starts with one thing. You got people out here that they be listing the whole thing, whole list of what you should be doing. Don't do this, and this. But, people look at that and instantly, they get essentially intimidated, right? They're like, damn, I don't know if I could do all that, right? Because it's a whole lifestyle change. A scripture that lines up with that, an example is when the apostles, when Paul and Peter were talking to the Pharisees, okay? And the Pharisees were telling Paul and Peter, hey, we're hearing that you guys are talking about you don't got to follow the law, right? And Paul and Peter said, that's not what we're saying. What we're saying is that, hey, you're telling, these new believers that were in the Greek fashion, living the Greek lifestyle, that you got to follow all the laws, right? You need to stop eating these foods. You need to stop doing this and this and this and this. And when you tell them those things, you're essentially putting a yoke of iron upon their necks, right? You're putting a yoke upon them that neither us nor our forefathers were able to follow, right? And it's going into the yoke of the law, right? It's very difficult to follow the law in totality in this world. So here it is, these Pharisees, were telling the new believers, hey, you got to follow all the laws. And Paul and Peter were saying, hey, don't put that yoke on them, right? Tell them the most basic things, right? Don't eat animals that are strangled. Don't touch unclean animals. Don't eat these foods. And start it there. Start it at the basics, one thing at a time. And that same concept goes into, this eating, healthy lifestyle. You got to start somewhere. And the most basic place to start is that exercise. Exercise is a big thing that, hey, these Americans completely neglect. When you look at the statistic of how many obese people you have here in America, it's like a 70%. I think it's literally less than 1% of the population that has abs in this world. That's how far it is. So, we live in a society that is telling you overeat, be a glutton, fast food, and don't work out. And ultimately, you can see the results of that type of philosophy. Hey, we're living in the empire of the wicked, okay? So that's the first thing you could do is exercise, and, just get to the gym. The most important thing is just going to the gym, right? Just be there every single day, no matter what. And, that consistency eventually is going to show. And one thing about the gym too is that another benefit that shows you that it links to the spirit is that it's been shown that these, all these people out here on antidepressants taking these SSRIs, it's been shown that the leading, depression pill, SSRI is what it's called, is equal to exercise. They say that exercise has the same effect as the leading depression pill. Okay, and that shows you that the Most High, has a natural way of you getting out of a slump. right? If you're in a slump, you feel down, it's because you need to start moving. You need to start getting active, right? One thing about depression is that, all these emotions, all the emotions we have a specific reason. They're just not there. They're just not there for, for nothing. No, every single emotion has a reason. And if you're depressed, it's because you're doing something wrong in your life. Okay, you're not progressing. Ultimately, you're not being active. So, exercise, can help with that. And, I can't pull out my scriptures right now just because I'm recording on the phone, but there's a scripture that goes into how Paul said that bodily exercise profiteth little. How, exercising bodily, it profits a little, but righteousness profits all. And that's the truth at the end of the day, is that, hey, what's going to get you into the kingdom is not no fucking dips. It's not no weighted dips, pull-ups, benching 2 plates. What's going to get you to the kingdom and salvation is having faith, being righteous. But even with that, right, what did Paul say? That bodily exercise still profits. It still profits. And something I always think about is when he said that, Paul said that in the Roman Empire, right? Way back 2,000 years ago when, the food was good. The food wasn't polluted as it is today. The people were healthier. So when he was saying it profits a little bit, they're living a healthier lifestyle. So if we now living in a lifestyle, in a world where everything is more tainted, more polluted, our bodies are more destroyed, it's going to profit more, is what I'm just trying to say. Right? Imagine it profited a little back then when they were healthy, and how much more today when the majority of people are sick. So in that bodily exercise, they start getting your ass to the gym, doing some walking, some running every single day, some heavy weights. Do it for 1 month. And if you don't feel better after that 1 month, I personally will give you $100, right? Because it's that powerful. So, you start with the bodily exercise. And the second thing you could go into, Salakia, is the supplements, right? There's a scripture in Ecclesiasticus that talks about how the Lord hath created medicines out of the earth, and a wise man will not abhor them, going into neglect them, right? And those medicines is going into the plants, right? The Most High, it has a plan for every single thing, right? If you want to boost your testosterone, right, look for that Tonga Ali, look for that Fedosia agrestis, right? These are all testosterone boosting plants, right? And that's something that you could do. Now there's people that will say, what's the point of taking supplements, right, when we can get it all from the foods? Now the problem with that is that might have been the case 4,000 years ago when the food was natural. But we live in a society where, hey, the food is not food anymore. Okay, the foods that are in the grocery stores are poisons. Okay, are something completely made up in the lab. Okay, do not have the nutrients that they used to have. So when people talk about supplementing, okay, all you're doing is getting back to that natural state, right? There's a reason why, you go look at a cereal box, okay, and look at all the ingredients on the back. You'll find that you have all types of vitamins added. Why is that? Because, that cereal by itself is stripped of all the nutrients that you need. So they have to add them in there. And that right there, it tells you everything you need to know, right? All the, you don't get me started with these vegetable oils, right? That's another thing that you can't be ingesting, right? All these mystery meats, right? That's another thing about a lot of people should know, is that you shouldn't be eating no vegetable oil, right? If you don't know that, then look into it. And the reason is because all these canola oils, all these rapeseed oil, vegetable oils, all these oils are ultimately inflammatory in your body, right? When you go into the research, I'm gonna get a little technical, but every single fat has a different type of fat. Every oil has a different type of fat. For example, butter has what's called saturated fat, which when your body breaks that down, okay, it doesn't produce as much of an inflammatory response, right? Coconut oil is essentially not inflammatory at all, right? The best things you can eat is coconut oil and butter, right? Because it has the least of that PUFA, is what it's called, polyunsaturated fatty acids. It's the least inflammatory out of all the oils and butters, right? Animals and coconut. Now when you go into those seed oils, they're very high in those polyunsaturated fatty acids, and that's why they're bad. Okay, if you didn't know, it's because of that specifically. So hey, all that peanut butter, it's really not good for you long term. So that's another thing to keep in mind. And how I was going into, the plants. The plants are the original medicines. Okay, and you don't gotta be out here taking no prescription pills, going to Esau, to the pharmacy, because at the end of the day, all that is witchcraft. Right? When you go into the word, pharmacy, it goes into the Greek word pharmakia, which that word right there, go into the Blue Letter Bible and search up witchcraft, and you'll find that witchcraft in the Greek is pharmakia. Right? So all these pharmacies that we be seeing, all that they're doing is literally witchcraft. Because when they give you a pill, to take away, let's say, your knee pain, they're not really taking away the main problem. What they're doing is essentially having your body completely block out that pain signal for a slight moment. Right? When you take ibuprofen, that's what's happening. You're blocking out the pain signal, but you're not really fixing why you got pain in your knee. So at the end of the day, it's deceiving you. Those pills are not fixing shit. And a lot of times they bring more problems than solutions. So if you really want to fix them, you got to go to the root. Okay, and these plants will really help you with that. They really help you get back to a natural state. Recently, I've been looking into the ginsengs, right? Which they're called adaptogenic herbs, right? And I'm going on a little rant right here, but just spitting some wisdom. When you look at, search up adaptogenic herbs. Adaptogenic herbs are herbs that essentially, come into your body and they adapt. Oh, my phone cut off for a second, but I was saying adaptogenic herbs are herbs that when you ingest them, they adapt to whatever your body state is in, and essentially help you come back, to your natural state. And American ginseng is one of those plants. Okay, in order to really get the benefits of American ginseng, I'd recommend getting it from Dairyland LLC. Because a lot of companies out here at Booth, but essentially what you do is you get the powder and you boil water, put a teaspoon of that powder, in a blender, okay, and you put the boiling water in with the American powder, and you just blend it. Okay, you just blend it for the 2 minutes, on high, and what you're gonna see is that it's gonna start foaming up like crazy, and that's when you know that it's working. And the reason you have to do that is because in order to get the active compounds of the ginseng, you have to heat it up. Okay, what the Chinese used to do, which the original way to do it is to, make tea. Okay, just put it in water, but, leave it there. And over hours and hours, eventually you get the results. But in order to get, do it way faster, a little hack is boil some water, put it in the blender, put the powder, and just mix it 2-3 minutes, and you'll see that it starts foaming. And that's how you know that, those saponins is what's called the active ingredient are active, and that you're really going to get that effect, right? And ginseng, American ginseng, has been shown to, adapt to the body, make you more resilient, make you, able to be stronger, be able to tolerate more stress. There's a lot of research backing it. These Chinese have been taking these herbs for a long time, and it's not for no, random reason. Another one is the same thing, Korean red ginseng, Panax ginseng. It's called Korean Panax ginseng. It's a different type of ginseng, similar effects. Another one is maca root. Maca root is another one that helps, right? And you got 3 different types of maca root. You got the red, you got the yellow, and you got the black. The red is associated with fertility, right? So if any women out there, you got problems with fertility, problems down there, that red maca, will really help you fix all those things, adapts to what's going on. And the things about these herbs is that, you're not going to get an effect, an effect in your body in 1 day, in 1 week. A lot of these herbs, it takes, a month, 2 months, a time for the full effect to come in. So you have to take them consistently. And the one thing about maca that a lot of people don't know is that you can't get the raw maca root powder. You can't get that one to get the full effect. To get the full effect of the maca, you have to take the one that is gelatinized. okay? Which essentially what they do is they heat up the maca and then they cool it, okay? And that heating process, okay, is what activates the ingredients for you to get that effect, right? If you don't heat it, you're not gonna get the effect, right? So originally what the natives, the Northern Kingdom used to do is they'd make tea, maca tea, or they'd bake it. Not bake it back then, they don't really have that technology, or they did, but today, you can put maca root, raw maca root in the oven, and you could bake it, and get the same effect. But essentially, you have to heat it the same as the American ginseng to get the effect, and a lot of people don't know that. But maca root is another adaptogenic herb. Another one is it's just one mushroom. I forgot what it's called exactly. Starts with the M. Wow, I forgot. Give me a second. Maybe the Lord will put it in my mind. It's not lion's mane, but lion's mane has been shown for stress, to be helpful with stress. Cordyceps. So cordyceps is another herb that can help you with energy. When you go into what cordyceps does, essentially is it helps you recycle ATP more efficiently. So ATP is where your body essentially is like your energy of your body, right? Your body gets carbs, and it turns it into ATP energy. So cordyceps, a mushroom, helps you recycle that ATP and essentially reuse it. And easiest way to put it is more energy. An example of how powerful this is that the Chinese, okay, and the women's, I think it was cycling team, they used cordyceps for like 5-6 years. In those 5-6 years, they won gold in all the events. And they talked about how that was a main contribution for the team, and really a kickstarter was the fact that that cordyceps, they were using it for a long time, and it really helped that performance. So cordyceps is another herb, that can really help you level up. And you could research, ashwagandha. A lot of people use ashwagandha. Now the thing about ashwagandha is that, and the main thing it does is that it reduces cortisol, takes away your stress. But the flip side on that is that you can't abuse it, because there have been many reports, anecdotes of people that take ashwagandha and experience adhonia, which is essentially no emotions at all. They start taking it and they realize that they lose all emotion, that they feel nothing. And the reason that is because you see, the Most High has a balance for everything. In order to feel good, you have to feel bad. And when you take that compound, you're removing all the stress completely. You're blocking that cortisol, so you're not going to feel, those dopamine hits as you used to feel them. And people have reported that, I started taking ashwagandha and, I lose motivation for everything. That's the side effect of it. So that's one thing you do have to be careful with is, at the end of the day, these are medicines, okay? And medicines are not meant to take, super duper long term. It's a medicine. You take it for a specific time for a reason, and you stop. Right? A perfect example of how to take ashwagandha is if you're super stressed. Right? If you're super stressed, hey, make yourself a little ashwagandha tea, or if you got, ashwagandha extract, ashwagandha gummy, whatever, and pop it. Whenever you're super duper stressed and you just need that chill, that's the best way to use it. But again, back to, the main point, the Spirit just had me, rant, just go into a couple of benefits of these things. But at the end of the day, why? Why are we doing all these things? The reason is to be able to spiritually output more, right? When you're physical, your body, your temple is on point, is healthy, you feel more energized. You don't feel slow, lethargic. And as a result, the spirit is energized, right? Because everything is a balance. Everything is intertwined, right? It's called the immune system, the cardiovascular system, the everything system, because it all is one. So you got to take care of all of it, right? The more you take care of the physical, the more the spiritual is going to be able to grow. And that's the main thing of this truth is it's trying to be spiritually on point, right? Trying to spiritually grow. So if you ain't finding ways to do that, then ultimately Yahweh Shai said it the best, right? I don't want you being hot or cold, right? Yeah, or no, Salaki, that's Satan talking right there. Yahweh Shai said it, how he prefers that you're hot or cold. He doesn't want you lukewarm, right? So you gotta be either on fire for this thing, finding ways constantly to improve, or you're cold. You're not in this at all. You can't be on the fence, right? Because who does the fence belong to? It belongs to Satan. When you're in that spirit of in between, should I do it or not? That's Satan right there. Okay, we should be doing everything with confidence, never indecisive. So I'll leave it there. Hopefully this is edifying, and somebody out there could get some inspiration, some knowledge from this. Out here just getting some sun, man. Sun is another thing that's really important. And it's important because these Edomites are talking about they want to block out the sun. This dude Bill Gates talking about, oh yeah, we need to block out the sun, blah blah blah. Straight demons, man. Okay, that's the devil that the Bible talks about right there, is these Edomites. Okay, completely have this world upside down. But soon, the Lord Yahweh Shai is going to take them out of that position. Very, very soon. So hopefully this is edifying. Without and give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakah Kodash. Double honors to the outer bishops and apostles of Great Millstone that taught me this truth. Shalom to you, like Shalom.